To approach the locus of the prismatic reciprocity, inherent within the ontological substrate of being, is to encounter a paradox so variegated it defies even the presuppositions of its own apprehension. Here, one must confront the schism between what I shall term imperative distension, the incessant expansion of conceptual frameworks into territories of their own negation, and retractive cohesion, wherein the very act of understanding collapses under the weight of its own precarity, yielding not synthesis, but a form of hyperreferential nullity. This reciprocity, far from embodying a dialectical resolution, exists as a shimmering dissonance. Each fragment of cognition, in striving toward the whole, betrays its inherent inadequacy, for it is precisely within the infinitesimal finitude of each part that the totality becomes unreachable. The being in thought ceases to act as a medium for meaning, and becomes an antagonistic interlocutor, enacting a meta-resistance that annihilates the act of knowing before it can be fully instantiated. Such is the nature of the Meta-Perspectival Fold, a term I deploy to signify the paradoxical coexistence of mutually exclusive modalities of understanding within a singular conceptual horizon. The fold is neither a limit nor a passage, but an oscillation that defies containment. It is the moment at which the striving toward clarity is not merely thwarted but inverted, transmuting into an anti-clarity, a luminous opacity that both reveals and conceals in a manner that ruptures the binaries of affirmation and negation. To elucidate, consider the phenomenon of conceptual torsion, an occurrence whereby the effort to grasp the essence of being results in the contortion of the very mechanisms by which essence is grasped. The torsion is not a failure of the intellect, but a necessary consequence of the intellect's engagement with what I term the Paradynamic Paradoxon, the simultaneity of total coherence and total incoherence, each predicated upon the other in a manner that renders both irreducibly contingent and yet wholly indispensable. What then is the role of the subject within this framework? To exist as a subject is to dwell within the interstitial collapse of these competing forces. The subject becomes a kind of living Anacoluthon, a syntactical rupture within the fabric of its own experiential continuity. This rupture is not a deviation, but the very condition of subjectivity, for it is only through the fracturing of the self that the self can become attuned to the prismatic reciprocity of being. Yet to speak of subjectivity in this manner risks an oversimplification, for the subject is not merely a participant in this reciprocity, but its very instantiation. The subject does not encounter the fold as an external phenomenon, but enacts the fold within its own constitution. Herein lies the devastating beauty of the infinitesimal finitude of conceptual totality. It reveals that the act of striving toward understanding is itself the act of fracturing, and that in this fracturing lies the only possibility of meaning. What emerges, then, is a philosophy of agonistic simultaneity, wherein every concept exists in a state of perpetual opposition to itself, and every understanding is shadowed by its own undoing. This is not a despairing vision, but an exaltation of the incomprehensible, an invitation to revel in the luminous opacity of a world that defies our every effort to contain it. It is a call to embrace the fold, to dwell within the torsion, and to find within the fracturing of the self a beauty that obliterates and exalts in equal measure.